I'd like to call to order the June 28th, 2022 regular meeting of the Everett Public School Board of Directors to order. Closed captioning disclaimer is on your screen for those who are zooming in. Tragedy has struck our schools once again. We've lost one student who was a student at Madison Elementary School and one student who was at North Middle School. And two students are critically injured from North Middle School, and they are now in recovery stage. I know summer is here, but a lot of kids are, with the heat wave that we have, they are succumbing to tragedy as a result of waters in our Pacific Northwest areas. It is with that seriousness we need to make sure that we are constantly watching our children around waterways and the lakes in our beautiful Northwest area. Sadness will return in the fall when kids come back to school and they can't see their classmates once more. And I would like to take a moment of silence for the mourning situation that their families are under. And two, to also remind parents and children that there is danger around waterways and lakes. Please take a moment of silence with me right now. Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 2.0, which is our land acknowledgement. Director Nichols will be presenting the land acknowledgement this evening.
We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish, Snohomish, and Tulalip peoples. We express our deepest respect and gratitude to the ancestors of this land on whose shoulders we stand. In Everett Public Schools, we strive to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belonging for all students, teachers, staff, and community.
Thank you, Director Nichols. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Will the secretary call the roll?
President Lesane?
Present.
Vice President Mitchell?
Present.
Director Nichols?
Present.
Director Mason?
Present.
We'll now move to our first item of business, is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Saltzman, would you enter tonight's agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to the public this evening. Tonight's agenda contains the following. Hold on, you want to call roll? Oh.
No.
Segment for recognitions, the superintendent's report, segment for board comments, segment for public comments, segment for routine business, segment for information discussion, a segment for new business, segment for upcoming agenda items. Since publishing the agenda, the following changes were made to the agenda. Item 6.01, administration of the oath of office. The name of the judge administering the oath was updated. Superintendent's report, the presentation was added. Item 11.02, the personnel report. The report was updated to include certificated staff out of endorsements. Item 15.01, Comprehensive School Counseling Program Transitional Implementation Plan 2022-23, the presentation was added. Item 15.02, adoption of the operating budget for fiscal year, first reading. The EPS preliminary operating fee of 2023 document was added. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saltzman. Is there a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Mason and seconded by Director Mitchell to adopt the agenda for this evening. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll now proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries. The agenda for this evening is adopted. We'll now move to section 6.0, and it is a very honored position. I'll give you a little background on this. April Berg, who served as a school board since December 2019, resigned from the director position 2, effective 1 June 2022, having completed over 2 years of a 6-year term. The superintendent initiated the application process in accordance with our policies. And then on June 21st, the applicants came together for a final interview, and a selected finalist was chosen at that meeting, June 21st. That selected finalist happens to be Dr. Jen Herman. The board of directors selected Dr. Jen Herman to serve as the director for the remaining portions of the current term for position number 2. This evening, Everett Municipal Court Judge Amy Kastner will administer the oath of office to Director-Select Jen Herman. Dr. Jen Herman and Dr. Kastner, would you come forward and perform this ceremony?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Oh, please have your family come forward. And any people that you would like to come forward at this time, I apologize.
All right, are they all here?
We don't do this very often.
All right, so raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Jennifer Herman, do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington, and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties of the office of Everett School District 2, Director at Large, Position 2, for a 17-month term, according to the law, to the best of my ability.
Don't worry, your hand will get tired by the end of the day.
Thank you for giving her to us.
Congratulations. On behalf of the school board, I'd like to welcome you to the school.
Okay, Pam, why don't you scoot in there and I'll get a picture of the five of you in a front facing.
I know.
Jen, there you go. There, between. There you go. All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much.
And will the secretary call the roll? No. Fantastic. Welcome. Okay. We don't do this very often, but when we do, we are very happily pleased that we have someone who is willing to take the reins and run with it. Thank you so much for stepping up. We'll now move to section 7.0, which is recognition of the retiring student representative to the school board. But before we go, I'd like to say something. Early in my first year on the board of directors, the members here learned through WASDA and through NSBA, the conferences that we attended in the regional area, how vital and necessary it is to have a student voice on the board. Understanding the experiences firsthand from students is part and parcel to the responsibilities we have to help shape student success. Student representatives provide a firsthand confirmation of the actions we take to ensure that their experiences translate to success and accomplishments that shape their future. The board adopted and the superintendent implemented the policies and procedures necessary to describe how student representatives are selected, and additional requirements that they have in writing papers, detailing their experiences, and how they represent their schools and their classmates. Over these past 2 years, we have been truly grateful and beneficiaries of having Tara on the school board and be a representative for our students here in Everett Public Schools. We appreciate all the work that she's done to make sure that we heard student voices and that what we did reflected on their experiences. And for that, we're truly grateful. We are very happy for you that next few years, you're going to be off, shaping your future in college and doing some wonderful things. And we are very happy that we have shaped your future and here on the board. Thank you so much for what you've done. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to have a round of applause of thank you for our student rep, Tara Pilch-Pazan. You're here not as a student rep because you've already stepped down, but you're here for us. So I would like to give the rest of the board the opportunity of providing you with some going away thoughts and words. Director Mitchell.
Thank you. Tara, it is just such a joy to have you here. And just to see that first year students usually are very quiet. And we heard your voice even on Zoom. And you lived with us on Zoom, just like you did in class. And then this year, just really having the one night, I am so thankful that you had the agency to come when you're an adult full of rooms to say, do I not get to speak on this matter? And the fact that we forgot you, I will forever be ashamed. But just the fact that you had that agency, that it is a scary place to be the only child in this room. And you are not a young child, you're a young woman. And I am so proud of you. And I wish you the best in Washington next year, the lesser Washington next year.
Where are you going for your 4-year?
George Washington University in DC.
Congratulations. That's great. Well, I was on your selection committee, so I had a really, personal stake in you being here. I really, from that interview on, you have ceased to impress, and never ceased to impress, excuse me, and just super grateful for your service. And I know no matter what you choose to do, you're gonna surprise some people and upend some people, and I think it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You came on the board at a very challenging time, and I, amongst your other qualities, was also very impressed with the way that you handled being a student representative through a pandemic, and to hear your voice and still hear you representing your fellow classmates. It's just been so much fun to watch you grow. You often start kind of quiet, and then by this year, as Director Mitchell said, you're ready to speak up on everything, and we just so appreciate that. I wish you luck as you travel across the country, and more importantly, I hope you have a fun summer planned.
Tara, I'm going to miss our conversations. I think I even tracked you down at work a few times, am I right? To have our little check-ins when Danny would set them up. You were a great leader. You were one of my rocks during the pandemic, right? We were in that pandemic together and saying how bad it is and how we're going to get through this. You're going to do awesome in school and even further. I'm going to keep a close eye on you.
Yeah.
Okay, a very close eye. Thank you so much for your leadership and your support. We will miss you.
I saw Jen lean towards the microphone. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to chime in that I was telling Tara before, I actually also was on the selection committee with Director Nichols, and right from the start, you impressed us all, and this was over Zoom, and clearly you've had a big impact these past few years, so thank you for serving on this board and your contribution. Best of luck.
Thank you. I just have a couple words. I am the youngest in my family. I have 2 older brothers, and we all graduated from Jackson. So it's kind of like the end of my family's run in the Everett Public Schools. Me and my brothers all took really different paths in high school. I've talked about this a few times, but my oldest brother did Running Start. My other older brother did Snow Isle Tech, and they've both got jobs. The oldest one is at Boeing, and the younger one is painting planes for a company with Boeing. And then I kind of took like the AP track. And I've just been really, I've been reflecting on that, I think, when I graduated, because we all took such different paths, but I think all of us felt really, really supported throughout that. And I think that's something that's really special about the school district. So like me and my older brothers combined, that's 39 years in this school district. Wow. of experience with all of the different staff and teachers and personnel that have shaped our educational experiences. So it's been an honor to be on the receiving end of all the hard work of the staff and the teachers in the school district. And it's also been an honor to at least spend 2 of those years kind of giving back and getting to serve as well. So I really thank you all for that opportunity and for all of your continuing hard work as I move across the country. So I'll keep a close eye. You know, Everett's always going to be my home. So thank you all for everything.
Let's give her a
Does the board want to be behind on this, or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Why don't y'all
Just
come down?
stand right here, kind of.
You sure?
Yeah, we could.
Look at that, it works, except for Jen's got to stand over by Caroline.
Is that
We'll
we'll do?
R2D2 is in the way.
The owl. Okay.
We would like to do. Oh, you're down here. We got the picture.
Treats.
We have some treats.
Yes, and we have treats, so we're going to take a quick break for treat
Oh my gosh.
today.
And Jen's family can come get a treat too.
I guess we're just doing treats.
Take three. Take three.
Okay.
Are we taking a recess?
We'll take a quick recess, about 5 minutes, for a quick opportunity to shake hands and say goodbye to Tara as she goes to the other side of the country, to the other Washington. Yes.
Recognition's always the best part. They're the most fun.
We will now reconvene. Our next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report, section 8.0. Dr. Salzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to the public this evening. Good evening. First of all, again, let me congratulate the class of 2022. So proud of the commencements, proud of staff, all teachers, and all leaders. Amazing commencement. Most of all, when you have amazing students, you have amazing commencement. So congratulations to our students. Our Free Meals for Kids summer program began yesterday, and I want to let the public know that. It goes through August 12th. The information and times and locations are on our website, so please click our website. It is going on now and runs to the 12th. Summer learning. Summer opportunities are important, and whether at home or in class, students can find ways to keep learning in fascinating and exciting ways. Summer reading adventure. Find that summer reading adventure. Students keep reading. A reader's a leader. The Summer Math Challenge. All grades may engage in exciting mathematical activities, problem solving, and puzzles. And Everett Ready, a transition program offered in August for all students preparing to enter kindergarten in September. We want you to stay engaged. Summer Academy is taking place, and we don't want our students to have summer slides. So keep staying active, but also keep learning. Summer is the perfect time for fun in the sun. We want everybody to be careful too. On our homepage, we have a summer safety checklist. I encourage our community to check out that checklist. I want you to be safe. I want you to enjoy summer, but be well as this goes on. And finally, we had a wonderful closing. That's a tribute to not only our leadership on the board, our leadership in school buildings, teachers and staff and principals and assistant principals. We closed out the year very strong and safe. And I want to wish all our students, families, teachers, and staff to enjoy the well-deserved break. Even though we're having a board meeting on the 5th, I want to tell you now, have a wonderful July 4th and stay safe. Summer is a great time to recharge those batteries and enjoy time in the sun and fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salzman. We'll now move to section 9.0, which is board comments. I'd like to open the dais open now for board members to provide any comments they have.
I'll start. I just really, first I want to apologize because I was notified that people could see me on my phone during graduation on the big cameras. I was actually taking notes of the students' speeches and sort of emailing them to myself. So I apologize for that, but it was so lovely at graduation, just the honesty of the student speeches, hearing words that we're trying to teach them, perseverance. But then I also heard words of hope, and I heard words of disappointment and loss. And so just that honesty that the students came with on their speeches. And I heard a lot of thank yous for specific staff, teachers, principals. And I heard a student that we need to recruit as a teacher someday, who is going into education. So it was just wonderful. It's why we're here. And for the, 2020 did not have a graduation other than drive-through. 2021 had the outdoor. To be back in that room, it felt like we were back. But I think we're going to feel this pandemic, as they told the story of not being in school for a year and a half in classroom. I think we all know we're going to feel this as every graduation year comes up. Those stories are going to be the same or similar in the speeches, and but just such a great day. And on my desk today is the Sequoia graduation picture, and I proudly hang these on a wall in my house, and I have a bunch of them. So whoever becomes the next principal of Sequoia, please say we need to still get these, because I do appreciate them. As Tara had said, we have programs in this district that I think we can all be very proud of, that help each student where they're at, be it Running Start with different opportunities for community college, Snow Isle, and we're developing some programs here. Sequoia for students that need a smaller school and students that need catch up. I think we have a lot here for students, and I wish with that safety information that people do take advantage of that. And again, I'm very thankful for the health information we put out during the pandemic, and now some health information for the heat that we'll probably get this summer again, even though, you know, a 30-degree difference between yesterday and today is kind of weird. But anyway, thank you. And I hope everybody, we have another meeting next Tuesday, so it's not really summer for all of us. But I wish everyone else a happy summer.
Thank you very much, Director Mitchell. Mason.
I just wanted to concur with Director Mitchell's comments about graduation. It is just one of the best days, and just an incredibly inspiring day listening to the student voices and seeing all the happy faces out there and the happy families. It's just really special to be a part of. And since our last meeting, the only other thing we did was interview some candidates, and just so glad to have Jen Herman on board. So congratulations and welcome.
Director Herman, do you have any comments?
I haven't had the chance yet to say a board thank you to you all for this selection. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. You have always been an exemplary board, and I look forward to learning from you, working with you, and hopefully contributing to the high standards that you've already established. So really excited to be here. I did ask for some advice in the district. I said, what makes a good school board member? Any general advice? And they said, get ready to do your homework, be ready to listen and learn. So I feel very ready. And just while I do have the mic, I want to say a thank you to Dr. Saltzman for your warm welcome as well, and your staff. I did have some time today to get a brief orientation here at the CRC, and this is truly just such a wonderful, wonderful district. More than ever, I'm excited to be here. So thank you.
I'm sure your orientation will continue on, and then this summer you have an opportunity to meet with all of us at a summer retreat, so that'd be fantastic.
Looking forward to it.
Director Nichols.
So again, welcome, Dr. Herman. Really excited to have you on the board. Please feel free to lean on any of us. You come into this with a lot of knowledge already, but there's certain idiosyncrasies that happen with this district and board that, for whatever reason, some still trip me up to this day. So get any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I was able to attend the Sequoia and the Everett High graduations, and those are always fun, lots of smiling faces, lots of kids excited about the future, also nervous, you know, so you see the ones that look deathly afraid of what's happening, and it's just always a good time, and one of the highlights of my year. And I think it's important to remind ourselves of those good times, because, you know, lately there's been a lot to get upset over. There's been a lot of different tragedies. I think my favorite tweet of the week is I've had crunch wraps more supreme than this court. And, you know, there's a lot going on, and it's good for us to take a step back and appreciate the little things, like our kids graduating, like one of our own moving on to something better, welcoming new people to our community, things like that. So just hope everybody takes a little bit of time to kind of recenter themselves on positive and then get back to work.
Thank you very much, Director Nichols. I would like to also add to the sentiment of graduation. Boy, it's a wonderful feeling. I can say this, that there were times during each one of the ceremonies that I attended, I had to actually take out Kleenex and say, oh my gosh, how touching is that? When kids thank their parents, thank their teachers, you know, saw what was going on in the community and saw what was going on in their lives for the last couple of years, yet they succeeded and reached graduation. And they were still venturing on to new horizons and a new chapter in their lives. So I am very grateful to have had the opportunity to hear and be a part of their lives by being on the school board. And for that, I will always be eternally grateful. Oh, if nothing more is said, we'll now move on to section 10.01, which is public comments. The school board specifically sets aside this time of the regular board meeting to hear from our constituents. We do this because we value public input and we want to hear and understand your perspective that you bring to the table. The public comments part of the agenda is for the board to listen to what you have to say. It's not for debate or discussion. Board members will not respond to individual comments during that time. We do have a request from one individual, and this person says she's a resident of the district, but from what I know, she's a former employee of the district. Miss Lois Craig, she is here to speak to the board.
Good evening, welcome. My name is Lois Craig, and I am a community member, and I'm here as a representative of the Everett Chapter of the Music for Life organization. And we wanted to say tonight, thank you so much for this partnership that has been established between the Everett Public Schools and this organization. And this time of year, when you talked about how many great things are going on, this is good timing to hear thank you. We are very, very grateful. And I'd like to introduce Jane Weber, who is one of our founding members, and she's going to give you some more details about what we have been doing in the Everett Public Schools.
Hi there, everyone. Just so you know me, I'm a degreed engineer by trade, so I'm into facts and data. So I really want to share with you guys some really, really great news. December 2016 is when we were formed. This is a legacy of Dr. Joyce Stewart, because if it wasn't for her, we probably wouldn't have moved as far, as fast as we had. And since, this is the best part, you guys, since December 2016, this school district has received 529 instruments that are valued at $252,000, $250,000 worth of instruments that our school desperately needed. It just blows my mind, I tell you. So in case you're not familiar with Music for Life, it's an organization based in Seattle. It was created by a former Rotarian, or current Rotarian, but it's not affiliated with Rotary. It encourages the community to donate instruments that are no longer being used. You know, some of us have kids that were in the band program. We might have some of those instruments sitting in a closet somewhere. Music for Life has created partnerships with local instrument dealers such as Ted Brown, Kennelly Keys, and they encourage the community to donate these unused instruments to Music for Life. Music for Life also, of course, accepts money to repair these instruments and getting them into playable conditions. And then they give them to their partner school districts to use for free. The only responsibility that this district has is to repair them when needed, and that's not very often. So I thank you guys for that, because we don't want them to end up in a closet somewhere unplayable. So in this time, we have received a variety of instruments. All of them are needed. So we've received keyboards, drum sets. We've received over 310 recorders. Just this year, 64 ukuleles. We have received any and all band instruments, a French horn from a performance person in Anacortes. Drove it down here and it was glorious. It was a beautiful, wonderful instrument. He no longer played and wanted to make sure it went to somebody who did. Fabulous. We have also received a $12,000 Steinway grand piano. We have received recently a $2,400 cello. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Like I said, there's 529 of them. So these Music for Life instruments make it possible for the public school music programs to have an inventory of instruments to give to students who may not be able to, not give, loan to the students that could not participate otherwise, because the biggest holdback in participation, of course, is financial. And especially since the pandemic, the demand has increased because who can afford $50 a month for rental fees anymore?
Oh, very much.
Is
And I
it?
know the list can go on and on.
It can.
We would like to just extend your time for 1 minute.
Okay, I have less than a minute to go.
Okay, great.
So our current booster group this year has raised over $11,000 through grants and public donations. We've also received $6,000 from the Yamame Family Foundation, and the EHS Seagull Band Boosters were able to purchase a brand new tuba at a heavily discounted price of $6,684. This now makes us the most fiscally successful program of the 11 Music for Life public school programs that Music for Life supports. And because of this, we will now get even more instruments because you get what you put into it. So thank you guys so much for supporting this program and making a tangible difference in the lives of over 500 Everett Public School students.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I can truly say that I did donate my son's trumpet, to Music for Life, so that it would go back to another needy student. So thank you so much for what you do. We'll now move to our next item on the agenda, which is our consent agenda. Dr. Saltzman, would you provide an introduction to the consent agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to the public this evening. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items such as meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, surplus lists, gifts, grants, and recurring contracts. Sometimes it includes items that occur less frequently but are of a routine business nature. These items are usually reviewed by the board in the Friday report, 1 or more weeks before the board meeting. This gives directors time to ask staff questions or to consider discussion about the policy implications of those items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office received and answered 2 questions on the consent agenda, one regarding the personnel report, another regarding the discipline appeal council members. The consent agenda is presented as published for board approval.
A motion to adopt the consent agenda is now in order.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Mason and seconded by Director Nichols to approve the consent agenda. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Hearing no requests, we'll proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. We'll now move to Strategic Progress Monitoring, Section 12.0. There are no Strategic Progress Monitoring reports scheduled for this meeting. So we shall move to the Information and Discussion section, which is graduation. The first item is graduation update, Class 2022, and preview of summer graduation. And Dr. Kathy Woods will be doing the presentation.
Thank you very much, President Lesane, members of the Board of Directors, Dr. Saltzman, and members of the public. It is a pleasure to be here today sharing an update on the class of 2022 and their graduation status. I will share information about our recently completed June ceremonies and give a brief preview of summer graduation. I always think about our work as it's grounded in the strategic plan and the celebration of graduations and all the efforts that the staff took to ensure students graduate are centered in 2 of our priority outcomes. ensuring that students are prepared to succeed in college and career, and strengthening student wellness, engagement, and safety. I think you all talked about that in your opening remarks as well. As I think back to the student speakers at our graduation ceremonies, they spoke to these two strategic priorities. They didn't maybe say those exact words, but they talked about how they were prepared for their next steps. We heard Tara talk about that same thing as well. And they also talked about the work that students and staff took to re-engage students and build positive connections, which allowed them to move forward and prepare for their next steps. So let's look at our June graduates. The celebrations of graduation on June 16th for Sequoia and June 18th for Everett, Cascade, and Jackson were really remarkable. It was such a joy, as you all mentioned, to celebrate with these graduates, the staff at each of the high schools, the families of the graduates, and really all the staff in P12 across our school district who contributed to those graduations. To reach their high school graduation, students needed to meet the following graduation requirements. They need to complete a high school and beyond plan that starts in middle school and includes the exploration of their learning styles, career interests, and post-secondary pathways to those career interests. In middle school, they begin to plan their 4-year course, taking high school courses. And if students aren't at standard on their state testing, the high school and beyond plan is used to guide staff and students on the steps to ensure that they do reach standard. And if they're meeting or exceeding standard, we implement the academic acceleration policy to enroll students in the next most rigorous course to give every student access to courses where they can earn college credit or industry recognized credentials while they're still in high school. The high school and beyond plan is reviewed each year so students can see their path toward post-secondary success. Students are also required to earn 24 credits in specific subject areas. There are 17 core subject area requirements: English language arts, math, science, social studies, the arts, physical education, career and technical education, and health. There are 7 flexible credits, including additional credits in the arts and world language, which can be replaced by other courses that align with their high school and beyond plan so that they meet their career and college goals. Finally, students must also demonstrate college and career readiness by meeting standard in English language arts and mathematics through either tests or a series of courses. It might be the Smarter Balanced Assessment in math and English language arts, the SAT, the ACT, qualifying score on advanced placement exams, or earning credit in dual credit courses like advanced placement, college and the high school running start courses in math and English language arts. Students can also take a series of courses that aligns with their high school and beyond plan in career and technical education that's in one program area, has at least 2 credits, and leads to either dual credit or industry recognized credentials. And finally, those who are interested in looking at the military can also meet their graduation requirement by meeting the cut score for enlistment in the military through the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. It's gotten really complicated. Yes. But the staff at all the schools have become incredibly adept at tracking these varied ways of meeting graduation requirements and ensuring that the students are meeting each requirement. So to ensure this, and to ensure college and career readiness, school and district staff have put supports and interventions in place. And here are just a few examples. Students who take and earn credit in a dual credit course like Running Start or college and the high school earn 1 high school credit for every 5 college credits. And typical course in college is 5 college credits in a quarter. So they can actually accrue credits more quickly if they're taking those more rigorous courses, and they graduate with college credit. Students can also earn additional credit for demonstrating their college level learning by earning a qualifying score in an advanced placement exam. And this summer, students can also access Running Start courses for the class of 2022 to either complete their high school requirements if they didn't quite finish, or to earn an AA degree, to earn an associate's degree. And the state has made that funding available. So we have a few students who are finishing their AA degree this summer, even though they finished all their high school requirements. So they're going to get that degree free of charge. In addition to the dual credit courses, students who may have missed opportunities to demonstrate their learning because of the interruptions caused by the pandemic can also demonstrate that learning by passing the next higher course in a sequence with a C or better, and they can earn competency or mastery-based credit. For example, if a student did not earn credit in their 11th grade English course in 2021 because online learning just was not working for them, but they came back and finished strong in 12th grade and got a B on their 12th grade English, we could go back and say they have demonstrated that learning, they have demonstrated that mastery, and award them competency-based credit for their 11th grade course because they've actually demonstrated learning at a higher level. Another way students can earn competency credit is by taking an assessment. For example, students can earn up to 4 credits in a world language by taking a nationally recognized world language assessments. Students who do so and also meet the English language arts graduation requirement receive a seal of biliteracy. And what a wonderful way to recognize the assets that our multilingual students bring to us. And students can recover credit by taking credit recovery classes, either embedded in a support class during the school day, outside the school day, or during summer academy. Many of these courses have been designed by our staff and focus on the essential learnings of that they would have learned in that class, but also prepare the students to succeed at that next level. On this slide is a little clip from a note that a student gave to her success time or credit recovery teacher. And she says, "You are the main reason I managed to walk this Saturday at graduation. I'm eternally grateful for your encouragement and persistence." Funny if she's recognizing the persistence of the staff member. Our students really need staff to believe in them and then to persist in ensuring that the students learn. And this has never been more true than it has been over the last couple years. The state legislature and State Board of Education have also provided for graduation requirement emergency waivers for students whose education was disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. But there are specific requirements. We, the district, must make a good faith effort to provide students opportunities to meet the requirements, both earning the credits and meeting the graduation pathway requirements. We also must assess the students' post-secondary readiness and ensure that they have a high school and beyond plan and the skills and knowledge they need to be successful in meeting that plan. Finally, if everybody on the team agrees, and that team includes the principal, the counselor, the student, and the parent or guardian, then the requirement may be waived. We don't have a lot of waivers this year. Again, we have a few more than we did last year as these students were really impacted, but fewer than 50 of our 1,200 and some graduates received these emergency waivers. The waivers have to be documented and reported to OSPI, and they are reviewed for equity. If the student would be better served by staying with us for another semester rather than waiving the requirements, that's what we do. So our numbers so far, and just a little caveat here, I'm giving you the actual numbers of the students that graduated or will graduate probably this summer, but our graduation rates that everybody is on pins and needles about, those won't be available until fall when we get all the reconciling. So these are just the numbers. Sequoia graduated 46 students by June 16th and expects to have 2 more this summer. I think one of them maybe has already completed. And then they have 11 students from the class of 2022 who will be continuing either at Sequoia or in another program. Everett graduated 278 students. There were actually 286 that were eligible to walk in graduation on the 18th. 8 of those students will be continuing with us in the adult transition program for students with disabilities. So while they have met their graduation requirements, we don't have them complete their high school and beyond plan so that they are eligible for those services. These are students who we have both an obligation and a privilege to serve until they're 21, but they count as non-graduates for us in our 4-year cohort, even though they're on track to meet their plans. Excuse me, Everett expects to have 2 more graduates by the end of the summer, and in addition to the students in the transition program. And they have 2 more students who look like they'll be continuing into next year, either at Everett or in another program. Cascade graduated 381 students, plus 4 students who are going to adult transition programs. And they expect 3 more graduates this summer and 6 who will be continuing into next year. Again, it might be at Cascade, it might be in another program like our Everett Reengagement Academy Graduation Alliance. And Jackson graduated 523 students with 531 walking, including 8 that will be continuing. 2 or 3 more will be finishing up this summer, and a couple more continuing into the fall. These numbers are, of course, attached to more than 1,200 individual students who persevered through these last 4 years, including these last 2+ years of upheaval. And I think this is a real celebration. But we don't quit. So we have those few that need some more time. So for those seniors who still need just a little bit more to graduate, we have lots of support in Summer Academy with teachers and success coordinators, counselors, administrators working with them to finish and participate in summer graduation on August 18th. And as in past years, we expect the majority of the students who will participate in that graduation ceremony to be our students from the Everett Reengagement Academy Graduation Alliance. These are students who had either dropped out or were at risk of dropping out and re-engaged through this Open Doors program. Some of these students will be from the class of 2022, but there will also be students who are graduating in their 5th and 6th year. We've had 37, well now 39, because I graduated 2 more today. 39 students have already graduated since September 1st, and we expect several more to be able to participate in August. So finally, I think this Sequoia's graduate's face says it all. I can't even look at it, it brings me to tears. We have continued work to do to ensure each of our students graduates college and career ready and to strengthen student wellness, engagement, and safety. But our schools have done a remarkable job this year to make dreams come true for the class of 2022 at a level that didn't even seem possible a few months ago. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Directors, do you have any questions for Dr. Woods?
I just have one, if that's all right. You talked about continuing. Are those also like used to be called dropouts, or is continuing a different term?
Yes, so they are different terms. So we have dropouts or students who maybe they've left our school and we don't know where they are right now, and typically we refer to them as dropouts. But we also have continuing students who for one reason or another haven't yet graduated but are still with our system. And so we are looking at what's best for them. Will that be to go back to their comprehensive high school or Sequoia? Will it be to go to Graduation Alliance? Will it be to engage in one of the other programs that we have to make sure that they do meet their college and career readiness? So the numbers that I gave you today don't include the students who have dropped out.
Okay, because if I remember correctly, pre-pandemic, I believe we had exceptional dropout numbers. I mean, exceptionally low dropout numbers. Now that we're looking at a class that had more time in school, you probably don't know the total number of dropouts yet because we're still looking at all the numbers.
Right. We don't know the numbers, but it is higher.
It is higher,
Yeah.
but we just don't know by how much.
It's our current is higher than it was like current pre-pandemic, but we are still actively looking for those students and reaching out to them and saying, where do you want to come back? Do you want to go to a different program? What's going to be best for you? Because we don't give up on them.
Yeah, because and that's what we contract with the re-engagement to just continually try to find them and give them the opportunity.
Exactly.
And that's what was fun a couple summers ago, pre-pandemic, a young man to get his real estate license, he had to have his high school diploma. And to me, that was the best story, that we were still here for him. So thank you for that.
Mason?
Great presentation, thank you. Looking at those numbers, I'm really impressed with the low number of continuing students. And I just was curious how the 24 credits from 22 has impacted, I mean, it appears to have not, and what you attribute that to, my guess would be the expansion of dual credit classes and those kind of things, but I want to hear from the expert.
I think expansion of dual credit, but also there's been some tremendous work around competency and mastery-based credit to allow students to earn credit a different way, and then also credit recovery. And then another way is we've expanded and have multiple opportunities for students to earn credits when they're in middle school. So they often come into high school already having, anywhere from a half a credit of Washington State history to 5 credits. So we're really working to make sure that those opportunities are equitable for our students.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Nichols or Herman? Great presentation. I have one question for you. When you say that students can utilize their ASVAB scores from the military, how do you get that information?
That's a great question. Our schools, so we get it one of 2 ways. Our schools offer the ASVAB to students who want to take it, and you can ask the military. So the military will, or the people that do the test, they give us the scores, and the scores are not shared back with the military unless the student wants to share them themselves. Or if the student goes to the MEP Center and takes it themselves, and I had one in Graduation Alliance that did this, then the student can ask them to send us an official documentation. So either way, we have a really great relationship with the folks that do the ASVAB testing around here, and they've been really flexible, and all of our high schools have offered ASVAB testing.
Fantastic, thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
And would like to see from those that are continuing, and I know next year, you'll get that information as far as those continuing students and where they are and what they needed as far as resources to get them to graduation.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move to section 14.0, which is our unfinished business for this evening. There are no unfinished business items scheduled to come before this agenda. We'll now move to section 15.0, which is new business. And the first on the schedule for under section 15.0 is a comprehensive school counseling program transitional implementation plan for 2022-23. And I see our speaker is up at the podium. Mr. Peters, you have the floor.
Thank you. All right, well, good evening, President Lassane, Board of Directors, Dr. Saltzman, and the community. It is my pleasure tonight to share with you about the development of our comprehensive school counseling program in Everett Public Schools, and to request school board approval for our transitional implementation plan for next year as per the requirements of Substitute Senate Bill 5030. As you know, our school counselors provide universal learning supports for all of our students, often positioned to be the first school-employed professionals to recognize and address students' social, emotional, career, and academic needs. They function as advocates, collaborators, and leaders to bring about systemic change necessary to provide equitably administered comprehensive school counseling programs that are aligned with our district's vision, mission, and school improvement goals. School counseling staff demonstrate their commitment to promoting equitable student outcomes by examining their own personal biases and engaging in professional development to recognize and break patterns of bias. They also authentically engage with the entire school community advocating and collaborating to remove systemic barriers to help all students feel safe, valued, and supported in their academic, career, and social and emotional development. During the 2021 legislative session, the legislature passed Substitute Senate Bill 5030, which was the result of a multi-year effort by the Washington School Counselor Association and other statewide advocates to clarify the role of school counselors in alignment with current best practices. Substitute Senate Bill 5030 requires districts to develop and implement a comprehensive school counseling program, which I will refer to from this point on as the Cscp, for all schools in alignment with the national model of the American School Counselor Association, which I will refer to as ASCA. For years, the counseling program in Everett Public Schools has operated with many of the core tenets of ASCA, the national model, as a basis, and we are fortunate to be blessed with training opportunities and resources in contrast to some districts in our state. The Everett Public Schools CSCP is designed to meet the needs of all students at all levels. In alignment with the ASCA national model, it has a developmental focus and a proactive approach, including preventative activities, crisis response, planned curriculum and instruction, program management, and an emphasis on teamwork. It is accountable and undergoes continual evaluation and adjustment to remain current. To inform the development of our CSCP transition plan, we attended several OSPR webinars and we collaborated with some leaders from neighboring districts. Each district's CSCP must be implemented by certified school counselors or other qualified certificated ESA staff. And Everett Public Schools is already fully in compliance with this requirement. Ideally, all the elements required by Substitute Senate Bill 5030 will be in place by the 2023-24 school year, but it's anticipated to take 3 to 5 years to fully implement the CSCP with fidelity. So there are 4 components that are required by Substitute Senate Bill 5030 to be included in comprehensive school counseling programs. So our plan must include related state and national learning standards that align with the CSCP in the domains of social emotional learning, academic, and career readiness development. We will model the ASCA mindsets and behaviors for student success, as well as the Washington K-12 social emotional learning standards and the Washington multi-tiered systems of support framework. Our CSCP will provide a process for identifying student needs through multi-level school data review and analysis, and school counselors must incorporate data regarding program results, use of time, and communications to stakeholders. This process will align well with the existing school and district MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support, continuum of student supports, evidence-based practices, team-driven shared leadership, and family, student, and community engagement. The ASCA model recommends that 80% of counselor time be dedicated to direct and indirect services to students. Our CSCP will be reviewed annually to improve and enhance our program delivery, and it will be used to inform subsequent areas of professional development focus as well. There is flexibility and collaboration that's built into our CSCP to customize the details of supports that we provide to meet the unique needs of students in their school communities. Collaboration overall makes our work more efficient and effective. And the decision-making model within Everett's plan is to work with all stakeholders, both inside and outside the school system, to develop and implement educational programs that support students. This will expand our opportunity to understand and appreciate the contributions that others make to educating all children as we build effective teams and working relationships. So as we transition into the first year of our CSCP framework, there will be an emphasis on counselor professional learning and collaboration. Again, because we have been basing our practices on the ASCA model for many years, The training will be targeted according to the identified areas of need for our specific program. Leveraging the expertise of our counselors, regular opportunities for collaboration will be arranged within our existing counseling meeting schedule. The Cscp transition plan has been developed in partnership with and vetted through our Everett Public Schools counselors. It has been reviewed by our executive cabinet, and we are requesting today that it receive approval from this board to satisfy the requirement of Substitute Senate Bill 5030 in order to move forward for implementation for the 2022-23 school year. So on behalf of the Student Support Services Department and the outstanding counseling team in Everett Public Schools, I would like to thank you for your engagement and for your consideration of our Cscp transition plan for approval. And at this time, I would welcome any questions that you may have.
Directors, do you have questions?
I have a quick question, I think. How many counselors do we have in our district right now? Do you know?
This year, we had 55 counselors.
Okay.
And we're adding some next year. So one at each of the comprehensive high schools, and then several of the elementary schools that will qualify based on the collective bargaining agreement on their title status or free and reduced lunch status.
That's excellent. That's great news. And when the collaboration happens, are they, is primary and secondary separate, or do they all get together, all 55, and collaborate on kind of the whole process?
Right. So we have, in the model that we have when the counselors come to meet each month, they have level meetings. So the high school counselors, middle and elementary will meet just separately with their group, and then we'll have a combined time where all the counselors will meet together. So depending on what type of training we want to put together for any particular month, we can flex that a little bit too. And we do have the option of just having them all together at the same time for an extended training. Or we can continue with the model that we have where they can focus on level specific topics as well as meet together.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
So currently, what's our teacher to counselor ratio, or excuse me, student to counselor ratio currently?
So our high schools now, because we're adding the additional counselor at each high school, it'll be about 300 students per counselor. For middle schools, it's 350, and that was negotiated. Actually, both of those are negotiated at 350 for the high school and middle school, but we're adding the additional high school counselors. And then for elementaries, it depends on the size of the school. Every elementary school has a counselor, and then depending on the size, they can receive another 0.5 counselor. And then according to our collective bargaining agreement and our funding that we have now, again, the schools with the higher numbers of free and reduced lunch students will receive an additional 0.5. And our title schools also have the ability to hire using their title funds if they need some additional counseling staff as well.
Is there a specific ratio called for within like the ASCA model?
The ASCA model recommends 250.
So do we have plans to get there, or is it, what's the limit? Why aren't we there yet, I guess?
Yeah, it's I think it's a matter of funding and in some, as a consideration too, I think space availability in the schools is a logistic concern for some, but I don't think that's the reason yet. But when we've looked at too a graph of all of the districts in Washington State, we're actually doing better than many of our districts around. So it shows the dedication, of this board and of Dr. Saltzman too, of making sure that students' needs are met in these areas, the academic readiness and the social emotional and the college and career readiness.
Can I jump in real quick and ask on the same?
Can I just finish
yeah.
my line? Thanks. So, I mean, that's great that we're doing better than a lot of the districts, but it's hard to meet student needs as a counselor when I was doing private practice, I couldn't balance 100 people. That was a lot for me to carry, doing therapy, right? I can't imagine trying to get 300 kids, their high school and beyond plans, make sure they're following their class schedules, all this other stuff. So This to me sounds like something that we need to be addressing. You know, we're about to hear on budget, so cost of living, everything else. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think this is something worth pursuing further as far as this goes. And then the only other question I had about this specifically was a little off topic from this. So if you wanted to jump in with your question.
I was just going to ask what the state funds. How many counselors per students?
Mr. Moore, do you know?
So I know it increased this year, but I'm.
Funding 37.5 counselors. So even
For the district or for?
For the district. And so of the 50 with the added funding under the social emotional work allocation, we still are about 9 counselors below. In other words, we're not funded for 9 of the counselors we have in place.
9 counselors are not funded by the state that we currently have.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
And so the last thing is, if we've already been doing essentially the ASCA model, what part of this is going to take, 5 years for full implementation?
We've implemented key tenets of the ASCA model. We haven't fully modeled it yet. So we have some things that we can be tighter on. For example, that use of time, where 80% of the counselor's time is for direct and indirect services. And so we can find some ways, ASCA has some ways to recommend how to just keep track of that as a district. And so you can analyze your data and reflect on that. And I think we do a pretty good job. We don't use our counselors for, lunch supervision and, clerical things and that nature. So we're already probably a little better off on that. But I wouldn't say that we know for sure down to that data level. So there's areas like that we can fine tune. Also, we have a lot of counselors that are newer to our district, and it's probably been a number of years since we've formally trained on the ASCA model. Does everyone really know all the different components of it? And so we do need to spend some time just with that as well, right? And to your point earlier about the even the caseload sizes, I think it's the fact that the state is now requiring that every district follow a national model, and I think ASCA is the one that most districts are going to follow. This is now sort of putting that into the focus, right? Where before there really wasn't a requirement, we just tended to follow the ASCA model.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, and just to restate it, basically it sounds like a couple barriers to that. So time being the biggest commodity that we don't have, right? So the counselor's times to attend training, all these other things, kind of the unfunded mandate by the state, and then just kind of really going through the nitty gritty and mapping out how this is going to work in our district specifically is what
right.
It sounds like it's going to take the most amount of time. Okay,
that's right.
I just wanted to make sure I had a clear kind of. So we get time estimates all the time, and sometimes it's like, what about this is going to take 5 or 6 years? It seems a little bit easier on black and white, so it's nice to get that kind of perspective.
And this will give us an opportunity to really unpack all of the standards, right? Mm-hmm. So the ASCA, the behavior and mindset standards is a comprehensive list. Then you've got the Washington SEL K-12 standards, and then the Washington MTSS framework. So all of those pieces, right, to formally really unpack that and make sure that we're implementing as many of those as we can. And of course, that's going to take time to implement. It's sort of like the strategic plan in a way, right? We focus on some pieces and we can immediately implement some, and then, but it's, several years to really drill down.
Thank you very much.
And I have a question sort of about time, looking at the PDF that's attached to this with the sort of what the plan looks like. And when you're talking time and sort of thinking back to your principal days, counselors who it seemed like spent a lot of time with schedules and credits. And my experience with counselors, it was more, yes, there's this mental health need, but she's also missing English. And so it was, so yes, that's all in that 80%, but how do you make sure that it's or because, how do I want to say this? 80% isn't spent on something that is not really serving the student's mental need versus their graduation requirements. And that balance, because it's all in one bucket, and so it would be just a question of that time.
Right.
And
that's a really good question. There are 3 areas of focus for counselors in the ASCA model. So that social and emotional development is one, and that's a really important one. That's been one they've probably spent a huge proportion of their time on lately, right, in the pandemic. But the college and career readiness and their academic development, all 3 of those are very significant portions of their responsibilities. So,
and it could be cyclical. How the time is cyclical, but it is just sort of that importance on social emotional but there's also some importance on graduation. What are the supports there for them, again, with this number ratio, that if they're trying to get to the wonderful graduation numbers we heard, but kids are suffering. I know it's a struggle, so I appreciate the fact that they want to come together and fix it. And an unfunded mandate, I appreciate the fact that our local community supports our levies, because this is what we get with the levies.
I had a couple questions. When you start talking about implementation within 5 years, a fully implementation, and I'm wondering, how are we planning PD? Is it all in-house PD or something in which we have to send out for training or hiring the right individuals with the right mixes in order to fulfill the requirement that we have in 5 years? When you say we want to try and be fully implemented or start the process in 2022-23 year, this coming year, how can we be assured that the people in which we hire have the right mix that we need in order to fulfill all the requirements?
Say that it's similar to how we hire folks, how we make the decisions for training across our district. So for example, in August, we have our Summer Leadership Institute. And it's a combination of professionals that we hire to come in and speak and present, and they have just very specific expertise that maybe is, we don't have that expertise in our district to share in-house. So it makes sense to hire that out, right, to find somebody. But we do have also, though, folks in our district who have a tremendous amount of experience in a specific area, and it does make sense and not just from the content standpoint, but also that historical knowledge of our district and the inner workings of the relationships. So that's similar to how we will make these decisions. We have counselors who have been in our district for a long time who have a lot of expertise in different backgrounds, and who are ideal to share portions of this training. And then we'll have some other folks that we will hire out and have them come and speak to us because of their expertise as well.
When you also talk about educational programs, are you talking about educational program for our students so that they can then look for and identify when additional support is necessary for them? Because there are those students who may not know when it's time to ask for assistance. Are you going to be looking for educational programs or in placing in the curriculum that we currently have when to start looking outward, that you may not have all of the information within yourself to accomplish individual problems that you may have? And if you do, what does that look like?
So many of the programs we have that they exist already. So our harassment, intimidation, and bullying curriculum, there's certain types of lessons that are required by the state to be taught every year to kids, and our counselors in many cases are the ones that deliver the lessons. So harassment, intimidation, and bullying is one. Some of the safe boundaries and sexual harassment kinds of pieces are ones that we'll incorporate. Suicide prevention, things like that, that are also sometimes taught within our health classes, right? But this, when the council, and then also our college and career readiness portions as well. So when it's time for the FAFSA and the scholarships and things like that, the counselors will come into the classrooms and share that too. So those kinds of educational programs are things that the counselors have a lot of expertise that, the general ed teachers may not have that. So they pause and allow the counselors to present those educational programs to the students.
So they're somewhat embedded within the curriculum that we currently have, and we're going to continue to expand those embedded opportunities for education.
That's right.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
I have just one follow-up question
Yes.
for you real quickly. And you may not be prepared to speak on this, but since school counselors do tend to take up a lot of the mental health roles in our day-to-day in schools, the social workers that we hired, are they kind of appreciatively or quantitatively freeing up time for counselors to focus on other tasks that they have to do outside of the mental health realm?
Yes, they are. They're in addition to focusing on and really coming in and responding with tier 2 and tier 3 behavior supports directly. We've seen a number of examples of our social workers training teachers and training the counselors and even other administrators some techniques and strategies for students. So when they'll model the behavior. So they'll come in and provide the supports while the team is observing. And then afterwards, they'll go and have a debriefing session, and then they'll do some practice. And then they'll even invite another student in, and they'll practice and allow the teacher or the counselor to do that. It's fantastic. And it's really, so in that sense, it's like teaching someone to fish, right? So you can save time that way when folks feel that you're developing their capacity to provide effective supports. And so we're incredibly grateful for we had our full social worker team in October, right? So it wasn't even the start of the year.
Right.
And then of course with the pandemic, right, so the amount of time that they've had this year, but the impact that they've already had in a positive way really speaks volumes to that.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Well, the recommended action is that the Board of Directors approve the Everett Public Schools Comprehensive School Counseling Program Transitional Implementation Plan for the 2022-2023 school year. I'd like to hear a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. The action has been taken. Thank you so very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Hope we didn't ask too many questions.
No, it's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll now move to the next item, which is 15.02, is the adoption of the operating budget for fiscal year 2022-23, first reading.
Good evening, President Lesane, board members. Sorry for that delay, the technical aspect of making sure you do it right. I'm a little rusty. And of course, Dr. Saltzman. Tonight, we're here with you for a first reading of our operating budget for all funds. And tonight, I'm also accompanied by Ruth Floyd, our budget director. So it's with celebration and sadness that this will be her last board meeting speaking to you tonight. Also in the office, our other budget staff. But what I would like to emphasize for you tonight is just quickly the budget development process, mostly for our constituents, and welcome Dr. Herman, and we appreciate you being here as well. The Fiscal Outlook review, kind of how we're pacing in time, where we thought we would be, and then Ruth will go through our general fund and our other funds with the level of specificity that we do on an annual basis. So with that, The importance of this slide is to show to our community that we are, in essence, it's almost a half a snapshot, because once we adopt a budget, we're in the process of planning the following year budget. In fact, I would say we're in the process of planning the following year budget as we speak, as we begin to look at our fund balance being utilized and the decisions we need to make. But certainly, we appreciate the board participation on several dates leading up to this point. Of course, the celebration of our students coming on May 8th is always a highlight. And yet tonight, we always want to provide to you a snapshot of what the budget looks like at this point in time. We are highly restricted on how and when we bring you a budget. By July 10th, even when the legislature seems to go to June 30th, we need to make a budget available to the public. And we also need to hold a hearing and adoption on the same day. So separate from that, we generally have a first reading in July, provide the information to the public. We wait until August to have a hearing and adoption to allow our public and our board to be privy of that. It's difficult to have a hearing and the adoption on the same night and expect some form of change. So this is our informal conversation with the public before you. All budgets need to be adopted by August 31st, and we are required to prepare it on a pretty structured software form, which is attached, and we try to convert that to layman's sense, and also provide Citizens Guide to the budget on our website. So this is our schedule. Tonight's the first reading. We will issue notices of public hearings on the dates noted here, and then we will be before you in August. So looking at our fiscal outlook, these slides, if you look back over a number of years, I want to go back to March 2021, about a year ago, and a little more than a year ago, and it was at our budget review in the spring. And just recall that we continue to look at a structural deficit that's a result of the McCleary decision, where salaries and allocations were set at a higher rate. Regionalization really froze funding, and then local levies were capped at a lower level and cut significantly. But fortunately, as we continue to look at some of the things, well, fortunately and unfortunately, as we went into COVID and began to see some of the implications, the federal government provided us some ESSER spending, a fair amount, 35 million over a number of years. And then we also know that unfortunately with vacancies, we had a lot of COVID savings. So at this point in time, a year ago, we had planned for some reductions in the current fiscal year. But at that point in time, we realized that we could delay those until 2022-23, which is next year. If you move forward to this December, we again thought that our fund balance with this COVID savings, that again, we could move those cuts out from 21-22 out to 22-23. And that in essence is the reality that we're facing at this point in time. If you look at, for example, what our anticipation, what our thoughts were, what our projections were at that time, since December, when that snapshot was taken, we have seen higher labor costs, and we have begun to see all of our COVID costs return. And of course, we all experience in our home and throughout the world today the dramatic costs of inflation. So and we also, when we looked at legislative outcomes, which we provided at our last meeting, we did receive enrollment stabilization, which for this particular year, and we received that funding in the current year, and that has allowed us to offset some of these rising costs. And our goal is to provide an ending fund balance of 9.8%, as you will see in the accompanied, I believe it's the May financial report in your packet. We also had benefited from transportation funding in the current year. In essence, the state did come in and provide us additional transportation funding, because we know that a lot of the impacts of COVID, that the funding formula at the state is really broken at this time. That did allow us to actually make some investment of those funds, because as we mentioned earlier in the year, it's sort of a use it or lose it in a fiscal year. We did hope that two of the bills running through, one through the Senate, one through the House, would have changed the transportation funding formula. It did not pass. It is on everybody's legislative agenda, but they did, however, authorize $13 million in safety net. So in the event that we are in the next fiscal year, see ourselves having a shortfall, we will certainly be applying for the safety net in the next year. But also, we had talked a lot about the levy formula. And in fact, our voters supported us in 2023 for a level of local collection that's 5 million below what we're allowed to based upon the current state formula. And then, of course, we've seen this description or this model in the past. The local cost of COLA we need to recognize that not only do we have additional staff, so this model shows for educators, for administrators, for classified, that there's a portion of each individual's salary that is not funded by the state. And in addition, we have additional people, particularly in the classified area. So the state still does continue to underfund our salaries in that respect, but also know that our programs such as our federal programs or our food services programs, they aren't equally getting federal funding increase of a 5.5% COLA. So we have looked at how we're going to make adjustments going into the following school year and begun doing so at this point in time. I mean, the good news is also, as I provided in a Friday report, the CEP program is in place for food services. So we're in the middle of understanding and getting clarification. We think that'll serve about 2/3 of our schools, and 1/3 of them will return to the traditional model of free and reduced price lunch, with the caveat that the state also paid for reduced. So when we look at that all together, we know that we have made some budget adjustments going into next year. Internally, we first of all have looked at this current year and said, let's hold back on spending. We need to maintain that 9.8% fund balance, but we're still looking at a 4% drop for next year. So we're going to continue to work not only on the current fiscal year but that's being proactive as we begin to enter in planning for the 23-24 budget. So the budget plan assumptions. First of all, the enrollment projection is down about 31 from prior year actuals. We do see some growth, so we are anticipating some improvement in student enrollment in the fall. Fall class sizes, we've had additional ESSER staff, and we've actually had the ability to leave additional staff in the building. We will be staffing our buildings tighter. Local levy will increase for the next year. It's based upon CPI. It's based upon August CPI, and it continues to track high. So we're assuming that. We also know, and especially with the Keep Kids Fed legislation that just went through, that our food services program is going to be able to continue to support our community. And we know that what I mentioned earlier is that transportation funding will continue to pay for itself. If we need to access that safety net, that's what we'll do. But also remember that when we have the additional funding for this year, we're investing that in a way that's going to support our future. We're investing that by the end of this year in the electrical infrastructure, so that a year later, we both have the infrastructure in place. But beyond that, what that does, because the formula looks back at prior year's expenditures, is that will give us a greater capacity in the following year, especially when we've worked to provide additional transportation to our community within that half a mile. We have that down to just 5 routes. So that increased revenue as a result of investing this year will help offset any increase related to the 5 routes in transporting more kids to school. Utility budget, we've looked at the current year utility budget. We've extrapolated the increases we've seen this year and added 5% to them. And then, as I mentioned, we've looked at reduced spending in the current year, as well as looked at next year and asked for some discretionary budget reductions within the budgets. And as I mentioned, we will continue to transition Director Nichols as the state in over a 3-year period begins to increase the SEL funding. That is when we can look at the opportunity to support additional positions. But as Mr. Peters mentioned, we do have those 3 additional counselors in our high school and 3 at the elementary level. Ongoing adjustments, we will continue to keep you informed going forward, and it will be an ongoing process that we'll be communicating with you on a regular basis. So what I would now like to, that's sort of the set, and now to go through more of the detailed levels numbers, I'd like to invite Ruth Floyd up here to present. Give him a hug.
Not right now. Good evening. I'd like to go through all of the 5 budgeted funds for the district. First, general fund. This is a summary of general fund showing overall increases in revenues and expenditures compared to the prior year budget. Primarily, those increases are due to salary and other cost increases. Total fund balance is budgeted at 6%, which is above our 5% targeted in board policy. The restricted fund balance includes program carryovers from the state and federal government and other areas that require a restriction to our fund balance. The non-spendable are estimated inventory and prepaid items that are paid in the current fiscal year but don't become expenditures until the following fiscal year. And then the assigned includes school carryover funds. And then the unassigned is at nearly 5% of projected expenditures, where board policy targets 2.5%. For our enrollment, we look at it a couple of different ways. The first is October 1 headcount. That's a snapshot on October 1 of the students that are in our district. And we're budgeting 305 less than our current year budget, but 31 less than where we actually ended up for the year in 21-22. And then our annual FTE is what our funding is, annual average FTE is what our funding is based on, and we don't have that dialed in totally, so it's still called an estimated actual because there are revisions that continue through August, and that is projected to be 9 above where we're currently at. And then 213 below where we currently are. And the reason that the FTE, annual average FTE, can be different is lower actually than the headcount reduction is because of we continue to lose kids throughout the year, but we estimated that we would lose more than we actually did, so that that FTE ended up being less than the number of students as a head count. And then we also had a higher running start, which factors into the annual average FTE. Budgeted revenues are increasing in every area except federal special purpose, and that federal special purpose area is where we have our ESSER funds, which we are spending this year, and so the dollar amount that we're carrying forward is actually, and spending next year is actually lower than what we are in the current year, spending in the current year. The other reason for that decrease is the meal program that we have is shifting from almost totally, 100% almost, federal dollars, free meals, back to paid meals in local non-tax, as well as the state community eligibility program that we've spoken about before. This is a graphical way of looking at our revenues. State dollars fund about 73% of our programs. Federal in this current projected year is about 7.7%, and that federal is lower than what it was in the current year, what we budgeted in the current year, but still higher than pre-pandemic. So we still have a large influx of federal dollars because of the pandemic. And then local levy funds are nearly 15% of our budget. Budgeted expenditures, we look at it a couple of different ways, and program is one of them. You can see that we have increased in almost every area. The notable exception is federal special purpose, again, because of those ESSER funds. Community services and early learning is also increasing due to additional ECAP funds, as well as some American Rescue Plan, which is related to our ESSER. ESSER 3 was from the American Rescue Plan, but we also got some early learning funds through that program as well. Here's the graphical way of looking at expenditures by program. Most of our expenditures are basic ed, nearly 70%, and when you add CTE, that's almost 74% of our budgeted expenditures. Federal special purpose is at almost 11%, and similar to the revenues, it is a lower percent than the current year, but still more than pre-pandemic. And then the other way to look at expenditures is by object, which is kind of the what we use our funds for. And the salaries and benefits have increased due to the implicit price deflator, which is the way we get our funds and pass along those salary and benefit increases. And then we do have a reduced number of teachers because there were some funded by ESSER. We have also fewer supplies and materials, which is the notable decrease in the budget to budget comparison. Supplies have decreased, and that's mainly due to we're spending less on PPE, we're spending less on some of the supplies that we needed and spent on with the federal ESSER funds, including computers and that kind of thing, hotspots. Budget expenditures by object, our salaries and benefits range between 85 and 86% every budget year, with the remaining being the material, supplies, and operating costs. And for our other funds, capital projects, we had a higher beginning balance, and our revenues and expenditures are increasing. And they're higher due to the 2023 spring collections of the levy that was recently passed by our voters, and the corresponding project spending associated with that. The plans are in place to do some of that spending. The next is the projects that we have planned to spend in the next fiscal year. And keep in mind that this is kind of a snapshot of that particular fiscal year. It's not the total project budgets. It's only that portion in which we will be spending, or we plan to spend, next fiscal year in 22-23 fiscal year. And some of the notable items include the one-to-one mobile project. It includes about $14 million in costs. The device life cycle is 4.3. We have the clean building upgrades at $4.5 million, as well as other miscellaneous electrical, mechanical, HVAC projects, some portable relocations and purchase capacity if we need it, and then property purchase and other site work if we need that, capacity for that, as well as roof and flooring replacements, stadium upgrades, and other projects, other building projects. In debt service fund, revenues and expenditures are decreasing. They are in line with our principal and interest payment schedules, and do reflect our lower bond debt balance. Associated Student Body Fund is as presented to you by the students in May. The totals reflect slightly lower revenues and expenditures compared to budget, but quite a bit higher than the current year, actuals, students are hopeful it will be a more normal year for their activities.
Yes.
And then for Transportation Vehicle Fund, our smallest fund, we do have capacity to purchase up to 3 electrified buses for next year. And the Department of Ecology Grant Award is in process. It's been submitted, and the coordination of that is in process. And then the other area of revenue that the Transportation Vehicle Fund gets is state depreciation for our buses that the district owns, and those are paid on the last day of August of the fiscal year. And that is the last fund for budget year 22-23, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Directors, your questions, please.
I have 2.
Yes.
One of them might not be answerable right now, has to go with the previous meeting, but with the new gun bill, I keep seeing in the press some money for mental health. Not quite sure if we know yet, because I haven't read all the details. I don't know if anybody has. Does that go to school districts, or does it go to communities, or does it go to states to divvy out, or does anybody know yet?
The typical pattern is it's allocated to the states, and the states themselves then apply their own rules and allocation systems. So we're waiting to hear the same news, and we anticipate it will be some time before they clarify and give OSPI the rules in which that they then implement those programs.
Because I was wondering if part of that could help with our unmet need for their current funding for counselors, if it would come to us or anything.
I completely agree. I know Dr. Salzman shared an email, a text on the weekend that definitely highlighted that benefit, and we're equally hopeful to that we are able to leverage that.
All we know right now is it's allocated by the federal government. We just don't know when.
When and what.
I wish we knew now so we could plan.
Yeah, because especially as the SEL, like that, all that ESSER money we were using for SEL, if we can offset it with some other federal money would be awesome. My next question, because I probably myself and everybody else in the county got their audit notices this week, where very rarely are Zillow and the county auditors pretty much aligned. But with our levies, that is max dollar count collected, not my house went up and now I'm going to see this astronomical tax bill. My taxes will go up, but we can only collect a dollar amount.
Correct. So as the maximum dollar amount, and then your rate goes down based on the allocation.
Okay, but then some of the other taxes which don't have that dollar amount.
Exactly,
that's
they
why
will go up.
I could see an increase, but for the school district, my rate will.
For the operating levy, yes.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that, because I want that publicly clarified as everybody's getting these shocking notices. So thank you.
I'd like to piggyback before we move on to the next director off of your question that she asked about social emotional dollars received as far as security. Also, school security was part of that bill as well. I know we've done a lot of work in the past regarding school security here in Everett Public Schools. My question is, do we have any outstanding requirements necessary for school security that we can at least let our legislature know now that we still have some need here in Everett Public Schools?
Do you want to take that one?
The short answer is yes, we do have significant outstanding needs. We're again hopeful that some of the federal dollars is available, and significant needs. That SEL money was broad. It includes classified staff for security, it includes parent engagement, and the whole gamut of things that are underfunded, and they continue to be underfunded, and we need to use those resources as best we can, support our students each year.
So we're in the process of identifying how that could be used. So if asked by our legislature, we are ready and able to provide any details to them for that need. Thank you. Directors on the budget.
I had one question. Mine's around COLA and the implicit price deflator. We were a bit caught off guard this year with, everyone was, with the increase in inflation, and what we had budgeted last year for salary increases was very different than what actually ended up happening. How are we preparing for that next year?
Do you mean in the 2023-24 budget year, the following budget year, or?
I guess I'm looking at the budget for next year and wondering what we are planning in terms of possible, I mean, you have to predict, right? So it's not that easy, but are we prepared for another larger than normal, what I know as normal, 2-3% COLA could be, 5, 7.
Yes, we're for the 22-23, the 22-23 budget has built in the IPD that has come out, and then those salary increases are for the most part fixed.
Okay.
We know what those are for the budget in which you're looking at currently for 22-23.
Okay.
And then we estimate the following out years at a reasonable percentage that we feel it could be. So our thoughts would be that it wouldn't be as high as this year, but it will be most likely in the 3-ish range. But as you know, we don't know that. And so we, estimate with the information that we have, and OSPI also provides an outlook for future years that we can rely on as well. And then it gets updated as they get more information, and we will update our projections as we get that information as well. So it's an evolving process when we do our outlook, when we do the out years. We keep changing it as we get better information.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add, Jeff?
No, I think that was.
Director Nichols, no? Director Herman, do you have any questions? I have a couple questions that I would like to ask. When you start talking about adjustments being made to the budget to respond to cost impacts, and you start looking at reducing school building and departments' discretionary budget, my concern is that in this time of need, their budget's already at a very low level right now. My concern is those programs which affect directly the student, that we shy away from reducing their budget any further below that they're currently at. Looking at programs that don't affect the students or don't impact students directly are more important than those that do affect or provide those resources for those very vulnerable students.
That is our goal, is to not, in these reductions, to not impact the classroom as much as we possibly can. That is always top of our list of goals when we go through these adjustments.
When we also look at the amount of funds that we have used to hire social worker, nurses, and counselors because of the ESSER funding, we know that next year we will no longer have those ESSER funds in order to support those individuals that we have hired. What plan of action are we taking now to identify, knowing all that they do, which areas will be cut?
Well, our hope is that the additional funding that will again come through in the following year, we can rely on that to maintain the social workers in the following year. The budget process, though, is we look at the entirety of the budget and prioritize based on those things that we have highest on our priority, and that includes keeping it away from the classroom as much as possible. We're worrying about the social emotional needs of the students as well, which means that social workers as well would be high on that list to maintain as much as we possibly can.
And I look at nurses as being in the same category.
And it is, yes. The nurses are part of that. The state basically is putting all of those areas, physical, social, and emotional, in the prototypical school model. They're putting them together in a one kind of section of the prototypical school model. And there is actually some compliance around that now. And so our full intention is to meet that compliance and exceed it where we can.
Hopefully House Bill 50 will, I think that's it, House Bill 50 will help us achieve that.
Which House bill?
The one
1664 is the physical, social, emotional staffing increases over the next couple of years.
but also the transitional House bill that we just learned of this evening. Will that support us as well? Yes. Thank you very much.
Well, can I just, I don't want to say question, I just believe, I want to really thank you for accounting for dummies, for non-accountants. I shouldn't call them, I'm not dummy, but none of us are dummies, but understanding educational rules and explaining that funding to us, supporting the ASB students, and I wish you the best with what comes, and I believe we all do.
I've thoroughly enjoyed working for Everett Public Schools, for all of you, and it's been a pleasure working with you.
Ruth, we're gonna miss you, and thank you for everything. Okay, and I truly mean that. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having this time on the board and being able to know that if Ruth's up there, we're gonna get the right words.
We're gonna understand it.
And
Thank
congratulations
you so
on
much.
the next step in your career. So
Thank you. Yes,
very
moving
excited
on
for
up.
you, as much as we.
Congratulations. Well, the recommended action is to move this to second reading. Directors, if everybody is in general consent, fantastic. We shall move this on to second reading. Mr. Moore, thank you.
Captain, may I have privilege for 1 second, please?
Yes, sir. Go right
One thing I want to share with the public this evening is two things. One is the cabinet has met for weeks and weeks trying to look at what we can reduce. And one thing we put in was a hiring freeze that we did not share yet this evening. So I'm going to share with the public. We put in a hiring freeze right now. So we're trying to do everything we can as we get into next year, and to Director Mason's question, that cost of living could be 5.5. We don't know. We don't know. And that's where you get surprised at the last minute, right? You get surprised in February. So to the public, we know that we're making some big decisions soon, but we already have made them as a cabinet, as a team, saying, what can we live without not impacting our students? But one thing we'd have put in is a hiring freeze right now, which would help through that process. I just want to share that with you and the public so they understand this is not an easy process by no means, but we did implement a hiring freeze, and we can't say that we don't know if there's going to be a cost of living or not, because sometimes it gets hit and we got to be prepared for it. So I just want to be real transparent with that, and very good questions from the board. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sauce. Appreciate that quite a bit. Thank you. We'll now move to section 16.0, which is upcoming agenda items. I'd like to turn this over to Dr. Salzman to provide an introduction to what's coming up in the next couple of meetings.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board Directors, and to the public. The July 5th regular meeting, the board agenda will contain the following: Performance Matters Agreement, Community Care Contract, Overlake Hospital Specialty School Contract, City University Interagency Agreement, Surplus Technology. At our special meeting on August 16, 2022, that board will conduct their annual board workshop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salzman. Section 17.0 is for an executive closed session. This evening, we will not be having an executive or closed session. That leads us on to section 18.0, which is adjournment. We are now officially adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.